people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. This weekend, on the undercard of Chizoria versus Pulev 2, Ramla Ali will be returning to action against Argentina's own Agustina Rojas. Fighter that sports professional record of 6 wins, 1 loss with 1 draw, no knockouts, and has never been stopped. To Ramla Ali's sports professional record of 5 wins, no losses, no draws, 1 knockout.
Ramla's about 10 years older than Agustina.
And about 10 times more capable as a boxer than Agustina. I've had the chance to review the footage on this fighter, and I have to say that she's in trouble. I feel like Ramla Ali has more than enough to outpoint her. At minimum, Ramla can outpoint her, though I'll go as far as saying that given the mean streak that Ramla has been exhibiting,
Ramla Ali's an amateur standout, comes from a decent amateur background,
and has since enlisted the aid of veteran trainer Manny Robles, and you can see the difference. You can see the difference from how Ramla boxed in her first fight till now.
She's more spiteful, more mean-spirited.
She's more spiteful, more mean-spirited, really sits on those shots, sits on those punches, having fought 3 times last year, only once this year, back in March. Her knockout, Shelly Barnett.
The second round knockout.
That was Ramla Ali's first recorded knockout as a professional boxer against Agustina. I think she may bank her second. Agustina, who sat out all of last year, though she has already fought 2 times this year, kicking off the year with a decision loss to the United Kingdom's own Lauren Parker in April. She returned to action last month, got back in the winner's bracket against journeywoman Elizabeth Britos, winning a majority decision.
And now she's fighting Ramla this weekend.
What should we expect to see? Well, Ramla Ali, as I stated earlier, she's always had very generous physical dimensions for the super bantamweight division. She could likely campaign as high as featherweight, as she has the frame.
She's got much longer legs and much longer levers than Agustina Rojas.
Agustina, who's a smaller, stumpier fighter, lower center of gravity, shorter legs, shorter arms, you know the drill. Because Agustina is the shorter, stumpier, sturdier fighter, it will be on her to apply pressure on Ramla Ali, and I don't think Agustina has the hand speed or the foot speed to do that. I mean,
I reviewed the footage of Agustina's fight with Lauren Parker earlier this year.
I'm not trying to be hard on Agustina, but she is greatly lacking in a lot of areas ahead of a fight like this, ahead of a fight with Ramla Ali. I just don't see what she does.
She's got nothing for Ramla Ali.
Aside from a name and a winning record against girls, a lot of girls who have upside-down records, I don't see what Agustina Rojas can do.
She doesn't have the hand speed or the foot speed to apply pressure on Ramla.
She's not athletic. She's not defensively sound. She's there to be hit. I saw her buzzed a couple of times by Lauren Parker. I think Ramla Ali could do a little better than that. I think Ramla Ali has it within her powers to close the show.
I think she can stop Agustina Rojas.
Agustina, who on paper, she is a step up from Shelly Barnett, who Ramla Ali fought in her last fight, stopped in her last fight. She's a step up from an opponent like that, though overall, she's not adequately suited for this fight. She doesn't have what it takes to win it. I don't think she has what it takes to give Ramla Ali much resistance at all.
The way she lunges and pushes her punches.
Pushes her jab. I don't think Ramla Ali, given her long levers, will find that jab all that hard to counter. Come over the top with a chopping right hand that could very well hurt Agustina Rojas.
If she wants to hurt her, and she doesn't have to, she can outpoint her.
Given Ramla's athletic abilities, her boxing acumen, those long levers of hers, she could comfortably win a points decision boxing from the outside, sticking and moving and keeping Agustina at the end of her jab, at the end of her lead hand. Bottom line, I've got Ramla Ali winning this weekend. Wouldn't be at all surprised to see her stop Agustina Rojas.
They're moving Ramla Ali at a steady pace. They're not rushing her into a world title fight.
And I think they're doing the right thing. We know that Sigaline Lafarve, this division's reigning WBO champion, she's spoken for. She seems to have a fight date booked all the way out there in October. So I don't get the sense that we'll see Ramla Ali versus Sigaline Lafarve beyond this weekend's fight. There still is Shernika Johnson, newly crowned IBF champion of Australia. Shernika Johnson, maybe she's somebody that the Ramla Ali people might be looking at. Maybe her, maybe Jamie Mercado, this division's reigning WBC champion from Mexico.
Right now, I'd wager they're evaluating the landscape to see which champion Ramla stands the best chance of beating.
A good number of them have a lot more professional experience than Ramla Ali does. Ramla only has 5 pro fights in the bank.
She hasn't fought for 8 rounds yet, much less in a 10-rounder.
Her last fight was billed as an 8-round contest, 8-round match, but Ramla Ali closed the show in 2. She's going to need those rounds in the bank. She's going to need that professional experience ahead of what could be a world title shot, a world title opportunity beyond this weekend's fight. I don't expect we see Ramla Ali fighting for a title in her very next fight. Ideally, you'd see 1 or 2, maybe even 3 more fights before she challenges one of the champions at this weight. I look forward to seeing the ring return of Ramla Ali and her progression to 6 wins, no losses and no draws. That's what I'm expecting. I'm going with Ramla to win this weekend. In other news, Ryan Garcia says, I can't pick a Matthew Hatton to become a world champion like Canelo did. It may have been true that Alvarez was a world champion at age 20, but everybody's journey is different, said Garcia. He fought for a vacant title against Matthew Hatton. That's just the truth. I just have a lot of good people in my division. I can't pick a Matthew Hatton and become a champion. I have to fight great fighters. It is what it is. I don't mind that he fought Matthew Hatton. I'm just saying, you see the level. When I get my first chance, most likely it will be against Gervonta Davis. Now, you tell me what's worth more.
Gervonta Davis is not a full-fledged champion. He holds a secondary title.
Devin Haney's got the full title. Devin Haney is your division's undisputed champion, and you still don't seem to be very interested in that guy, even when he was on your side of the street.
Ryan wasn't interested then. He doesn't seem all that interested now. He does seem interested in Gervonta.
But Gervonta Davis isn't on his side of the street, and let's just call a spade here. There are enough network and promotional politics,
That fight.
red tape associated with that fight, that it almost feels like a crutch.
We know that Gervonta Davis ain't crossing over to the zone, so are you gonna go to Showtime?
Not likely. If Oscar De La Hoya had expressed aversion, sending Jaime Munguia over to Showtime for a Jermall Charlo fight, which he sabotaged, what makes you think he's gonna send Ryan over there? Ryan, who's a bigger draw for Golden Boy than Jaime is. Why does Ryan Garcia keep talking about a fight that isn't about to happen, that he's not even in line for by way of the alphabets?
It's promotion by way of name association. He's not fighting Gervonta Davis. He's fighting Javier Fortuna.
He's dangling this carrot in front of the fight fans for a fight that isn't even about to happen. The fight that is about to happen, the Javier Fortuna fight, it's not a bad fight. But if this is anything, this is promotion by way of name association. You want to get everybody talking about a Davis versus Garcia fight so that they can indirectly start talking about a Garcia versus Fortuna fight.
How old is Ryan Garcia?
Ryan Garcia is 23 going on 24 years old. He's the same age now that Canelo Alvarez was when he already fought Austin Trout. You tell me, has Ryan Garcia fought anybody as good as Austin Trout was in that era, in this era?
Has he fought anybody that good yet?
He is the same age now that Canelo Alvarez was then when he fought Austin Trout. He is the same age now that Canelo Alvarez was then when he fought the number 1 ranked pound-for-pound fighter in the sport, Floyd Mayweather Jr.
At 23 years old, Canelo was fighting guys like Austin Trout, guys like Floyd Mayweather. Who are you fighting?
Ryan says that everyone's journey is different. I have to agree. Everybody's journey's different because everybody's not made out of the same stuff.
Yeah, everybody's journey's different because some guys have what it takes and some don't.
Some guys, they need a little bit more angling than some others. At 23 years old, Canelo Alvarez was swapping punches with the likes of a Floyd Mayweather Jr., and while he didn't win the fight, that does prove that he was fighting better fighters then than you are now.
He lost that fight in one-sided fashion, rebounded, became a better fighter, and went on to become the face of boxing in this era.
You think that's going to happen for Ryan Garcia? Because I don't. I don't think Ryan's got the cojones that a young 23-year-old Canelo Alvarez had. All by age 23, Canelo Alvarez had swapped punches punches with the likes of Austin Trout, Erislandy Lara, Alfredo Angulo, Floyd Mayweather Jr., whereas Ryan Garcia can't find the time to fight a Devin Haney. Is Devin Haney the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the sport now, the way that Floyd Mayweather Jr. was then? Because Canelo fought that guy at 23. Who's Ryan Garcia fighting at 23?
Yeah, everybody's journey's different because everybody's not made out of the same stuff.
Well, here's the thing. People kept twisting it like I picked Triple G after he said that comment about me, said Garcia. They keep on trying to pin us together, putting us against each other. I just gave my opinion on what I believe that Triple G can win this fight. I just felt that he would have the performance of his lifetime. I feel that Canelo is not in a good place, but again, I am not going to speak any more on it. I don't really feel like I should be bashed for speaking my opinion, my truth. He took it personally because what he said was just comical.
Ryan Garcia's got his opinion, as does Canelo. You have yours, and I have mine.
And if you want to know what I think about it, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do. Ryan Garcia is not going to go on to become a fighter like Canelo Alvarez. He's not going to be for the sport in the future what Canelo Alvarez is now. He's not going to become the face of boxing. I think he greatly lacks the intestinal fortitude for those high-tension situations in those big stages when he's having nervous breakdowns over lesser fighters than a Devin Haney, lesser fighters than a Gervonta Davis. I don't think he can hack it.
What was that Mariah Carey moment he had last year all about? What was that?
Pulls out of that fight, goes on holiday with his girlfriend, and these are the things that are happening before Ryan's even fought for an alphabet title. You tell me if that communicates the stability and the consistency it takes to make it as an elite-level boxer in the sport of boxing. The antics, the shenanigans you often see associated.
He thinks he's king shit already. Hasn't even fought for a world title yet.
Take a good long look at the landscape and who has all the alphabet titles now, and you tell me if you see Ryan Garcia challenging Devin Haney for all those belts. Or
is he waiting for one of them to go vacant so he can fight for that one?
What belts is he going to fight for at 135 pounds based on the lay of the land today? What belts at 140 pounds is he going to fight for based on the lay of the land today? You look around.
Survey the landscape. Who's he going to fight for a title? Who's he going to win a belt from?
Is he about to fight Devin Haney? You think he's going to fight the winner of Zapata versus Ramirez too? What about the winner of Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall too?
The only guy he keeps talking about is a guy who fights on a rival network under a rival banner.
Gervonta Davis and dangling that carrot. Gervonta Davis, who much like Ryan Garcia, he doesn't fight the big names. He doesn't fight in the big fights. He thinks he's bigger than boxing. Already, those things in mind. And that being said, Ryan Garcia is entitled to his opinion, whatever it is, as you are entitled to yours, and I am entitled to mine. And in my humble opinion,
you can't nitpick over what's in Canelo Alvarez's resume.
You're in no position to talk. And finally, Gennady Golovkin's trainer, Jonathan Banks, says this is going to be the best Golovkin you are ever going to see, but not because it's 168 pounds.
Well, I don't imagine making 160 has become easier over time,
as he's been having to make that weight for a while. Now, for this fight, not having to cut that extra 8 pounds.
That's got to be a bit of a relief.
I believe this is going to be the best Gennady Golovkin you're ever going to see, but not because of 168, vowed Jonathan Banks, Golovkin's trainer. Fighters, especially Alvarez, go up and down in weight classes. He does whatever he wants to do and is comfortable doing. If G wasn't going to be comfortable at 168, I don't think he would have accepted the terms at 168. As long as he's comfortable, he can be himself and do basically what he needs to do to win.
That's what Jonathan Banks thinks.
What I think? Well, Gennady Golovkin made 160 for the Ryota Murata fight, so we know that he can still do it. We know that he can do it and still perform up to scratch because he knocked out Ryota Murata, a much younger man, albeit a very inactive fighter.
But he can still make 160 because he just did, so making 168 shouldn't be a problem.
Both guys are 100% confident, saying they're going to put on the best show, noted Banks, who took over the reins for Golovkin beginning with his win over Steve Rolls. They're going to put everything on the line on the night of the 17th in September. That right there is going to make it a great fight. They're willing to put everything on the line. I think with a guy like G coming forward, I don't think 168 is going to be a problem. He's going to make his adjustments, and he'll do what he needs to do. This is going to be a war. If both fighters are saying they're going to come forward, if so, we're looking at one of the best trilogies in history. Certainly a more competitive trilogy than the Wilder versus Fury trilogy.
No, yeah, those last two fights weren't competitive.
A lot of people feel that Gennady is approaching the end of his career, though Gennady himself himself says retirement is a hard question. We will look at the attractiveness of fights beyond this fight, this upcoming trilogy with Canelo Alvarez.
What fight's gonna pay Gennady more money than a Canelo fight?
And if he gets knocked out the way a lot of people think he's going to get knocked out, you know, Gennady's never been stopped before. He's never even been dropped.
Canelo knocks this guy out. You think he sticks around?
I don't think there is a ceiling that I need to reach. I don't want to jump ahead. We will plan our future steps based on the outcome. After the fight is over, we'll think about what we can do next, said Golovkin. Golovkin is also not actively thinking about hanging up the gloves. Retirement is a hard question. It's hard to say. Every day can bring something new. Even if we just look ahead past this fight, we'll see what opportunities come our way from the financial and attractiveness of a potential fight. I will make my decision based on the situation and when it's a good time.
Even if he loses, he still has 2 alphabet titles at middleweight.
I don't see any unification matches in the cards for Gennady. If he loses, but still hangs on to his 2 alphabet titles, what's he gonna do? Go to Showtime, unify with Jamal? I don't think so. He's not going to fight his countryman, Yanni Bekalim Kanuli, who stands a very good chance of becoming the middleweight division's WBO champion.
Demetrius Andrade still has the WBO title for now, but for how long?
It's hard to make predictions. I'm in boxing because I enjoy it. When you make a decision to retire, it's usually not based on just one reason. There are a number of reasons that eventually come into play. So far, I'm still in business.
There's some things that we expected to happen that actually did happen.
Some of what we expected to see in Gennady Golovkin's future, it did come to pass. The Canelo Alvarez fight, the Canelo Alvarez rematch. In between there was a lot of talk about a Ryota Murata fight for a long time. Ryota Murata, a very big name in the land of the rising sun, guy worth some money. That fight materialized, and this trilogy, for a long time, people talked about it, and here it is. The fight is done.
The one fight that was talked about for a long time that didn't materialize was the Jaime Munguia fight.
It was in April of 2018, some years ago, approximately 3 or 4, that Gennady Golovkin tried to take on Jaime Munguia as a late replacement, but the Nevada State Athletic Commission rejected him as a stand-in opponent. Though talks for such a fight, they did persist for some years.
They did.
Playing with the idea of Golovkin versus Munguia. And if I had to guess who Golovkin might fight if he loses to Canelo but decides not to retire, decides to return to the middleweight division as its unified champion, the front runner for me would have to be Jaime Munguia. They fight on the same platform, after all.
It would be ideal for Jaime to take on an aging champion coming off a loss.
Golden Boy Promotions doesn't want to match Jaime against Jermall Charlo. You see that Oscar pulled him out of that fight, even though it was a title fight. And by all rights, Jaime should be fighting for an alphabet title. They've never been interested in challenging Demetrius Andrade for his brown belt, his WBO title, but an aging fighter who potentially could be coming off a loss very soon, that's right up their alley. That's what they want, and that's what I think they're shooting for. From Gennady's end of it, Jaime Munguia is a flawed enough, basic enough fighter that him and his team, they might like his chances against that guy, even if he is coming off a loss to Canelo at 168 pounds.
Upon his return to 160.
So I feel like if he doesn't retire and he ends up sticking around a little while longer, that's who he might end up fighting. Jaime Munguia.